They say I was the last notorious outlaw of the 1800s. Some called me a train robber and a murderer, while others called me a hero and a modern-day Robin Hood. Yet, you won't find any Hollywood movies about me, and chances are, as you watch this right now, you probably never heard of me. But history? She tells a different story. That's right, I was the subject of the largest and most expensive manhunt in American history. I was bolder and more daring than the James Gang, and just as ruthless as Billy the Kid. My friends called me Red Rube, but my enemies, they called me the King of the Outlaws. And this is my story. I was born in 1855 on the border of Alabama and Mississippi, just as tension was mounting across America in the build-up to the war between the states. My ma was what folks nowadays like to call a granny witch, but she would have scoffed at that name, since back then folks called her a granny woman or a faith healer. She believed in using nature as medicine, and she had remedies for everything from the fever, the stomach ailments, warts, rashes, and even heart problems. Folks traveled from all over to see her, bringing the elderly and babies alike due to her reputation as a healer. Paul was a man of many skills. He spent his days farming and his nights making what he called bug juice from corn. He also was the only teacher that us 10 youngins ever knew. He taught us all how to read, write, and to do math. It was Paul who gave me the nickname of Rube when I was just a little boy. And Ma and Paul were what you would call good people. They were folks you could count on, and they had every reason in the world to believe that I would grow up to be a respectable man. Me, I was a typical boy, spending most of my time helping out on the farm, and my spare time hunting or fishing. Truth be told, I was happiest when I was in the woods. I knew how to make fish nets from the bark of a willow tree, and I liked to make snare traps for squirrels or gum traps from hollow logs to catch rabbits. But my hunting adventures changed forever when I was 13, and Paul bought me a Winchester. I loved that gun, and I never went anywhere without it. And I was a crack shot too. I mastered the art of slow breathing while aiming at the target, releasing all tension in my body, and smoothly squeezing the trigger after exhaling. I spent as much time as I could in nature because our small cabin only got smaller as I grew into my teen years, and I was itching to leave the nest and make my own way in life. So, without any ceremony, on my 18th birthday, I bid Ma and Paul farewell, and I took my trusty rifle, and I moved to Erath County, Texas, to help my uncle out on his farm. I quickly learned how to handle a horse, and I spent 2 years going on cattle drives. I loved the excitement of the wide open space of the Midwest. I felt the freedom and the adrenaline rush. Best of all, I was making good money too. Before long, I met a beautiful woman named Virginia. She had willowy eyes and a radiant smile and long cascading brown hair. A whirlwind romance followed, and I promised her that I would give her the entire world and devote the rest of my life to her. And the happiest day of my life was the day we were married, and I purchased our own small ranch to start our family on. You know, one of the great ironies in life is how everything can seem so perfect right here and right now, in this very moment. Yet, you're busy working for something called tomorrow. And tomorrow, well, it's something that's always just out of reach. It's easy to fall into this routine of life, and I admit I did. I was always living for tomorrow, when it turns out I should have appreciated what I had today. I had my own little piece of heaven, married to an angel, and we had 2 small children. Life was perfect. That is, until one day in 1880, when I was 25 years old. Virginia got powerful sick with yellow fever and quickly fell gravely ill. Now I tell you, there's no worse feeling than watching the person you love more than life itself slowly slip away from this world right before your eyes and being completely helpless. I sat by her side as she grew weaker and weaker, her breaths becoming so faint and infrequent that I couldn't tell if she would be able to take another. And then she didn't. I sat there in the screaming silence of that room, with my ears ringing, my eyes flinting about the room, hoping to catch a glimpse of her spirit as it left. But she was gone, and in that instant, I was broken, and I cried for the only time in my life. Everything from that moment on was a dull gray, and my life would never be the same. Hey guys, JD here. Click the link below to check out my new book. It's full of stories just like the one you're listening to right now. Now, back to the story. The following spring, after Rube Burrow lost Virginia, he was late getting his crops in the ground, which was further complicated by a long summer drought. Truthfully, he was having a hard time taking care of his 2 small children, let alone the ranch. So he made the difficult decision to take his children to go live with his ma and pa back in Alabama. While he was there, his younger brother Jim volunteered to go back to Texas with Rube and help his older sibling get back on his feet. Yet, by the time Rube and Jim got back, some thief had stolen all the cattle, and his crops were completely withered from the hot Texas sun and the lack of rain. To top it all off, Rube was way behind on his land note, and the bank was threatening to repossess it. Now, Rube had been raised to be an honest man, to believe that if you worked hard enough, you could make it in this world. But he had literally lost everything he'd ever had. And there comes a time that when a good man is pushed too far, he reaches a breaking point. And for Rube, he had reached it. He just needed to get his hands on some money and fast. And one morning, the 2 brothers were standing at a depot in Bellevue, Texas, watching a passel of businessmen and bankers board a westbound train, when suddenly it came to them. Let's rob this train. We won't hurt no one, and we'll get just enough money to pay that bank note on the farm. Just as the train was full, the 2 aspiring outlaws boarded, and Jim put a gun to the conductor's head, while Rube yelled out,
"Get your hands up, and don't make a move unless you're tired of living."
They could half believe it, but folks started handing over their money, and their pocket watches too. They had successfully robbed the entire first car without even alarming any of the other passenger cars. And as the 2 men exited the train, Rube tipped his hat to the conductor, and the brothers disappeared without anyone even giving chase. Man, that was easy money. Indeed, $300 cash and 16 pocket watches. But it wasn't enough money, and within a month, they struck again, this time in Palo Pinto, Texas. They tried the exact same scheme, but many folks started running off the train. So Rube shot 2 warning holes in the roof of the train to settle them down and let them know he meant business. And it worked. The 2 bandits made off with $2,000. And in 1886, that was a lot of money. Best of all, they had robbed both trains, and no one even knew who they were, and the law had no clue to the bandits' identity. Strapped with all this cash, Rube let the bank foreclose on his old farm, and instead he paid cash for a new piece of land, and the 2 brothers set about running an honest cattle operation, and they lived happily ever after. Well, for at least 6 months, that is, before they struck again, this time in Benbrook, Texas, robbing the eastbound Pacific Express. Yet, they had devised a new plan to discourage passengers from trying to escape during the robbery. This time, the desperados purchased tickets and they took their seats. Just as they neared a long trestle that crossed over a deep river ravine, they pulled their pistols on the conductor, demanding that he stop on the trestle, which he did. And the heist was on, and no one dared to jump out of the train down to the jagged rocky canyon that was nearly 200 feet below. The plan worked to perfection, and the renegades could barely carry the bag of nearly $30,000 that they had netted from the stick-up. It was the perfect blueprint for a train heist. So 3 months later, they robbed the exact same train on the exact same trestle again, netting another $3,000. By now, the highwaymen had robbed 4 trains and were wanted dead or alive. But lawmen and detective agencies alike were stumped for answers. And despite the boldness of the holdups in broad daylight with hundreds of witnesses, no one knew either one of the brothers' identities. All totaled, they had netted over $1 million in today's money. They could have simply disappeared and never been heard from again. But, as you might have guessed, that ain't what they did. And what happens next would put the lawmen hot on the trail of these wanted men. Up till now, Rube and Jim Burrow had committed the perfect crimes, 4 daring train robberies, and they were completely anonymous, except in the newspapers, where headlines of their sensational crimes were front page from coast to coast, with stories calling them more notorious than the James Gang. But they just couldn't leave well enough alone. And on December 9th, 1887, they robbed their 5th train in Genova, Arkansas, stealing $3,500 from the strong box. The heist went off without a hitch, and the bandits disappeared into the woods with the money. But wagging tongues gave swift wings to the news of the plunder. And within hours, a posse had formed and began searching up and down the railroad, when lo and behold, they found old Rube and Jim walking down the train tracks with a bag of money. And the brothers had another choice to make in this moment. Up until now, they hadn't shot or hurt anyone. They could have just surrendered and at least escaped with their lives. And as the posse approached the brothers with guns drawn, Rube gave Jim a quick wink, and both men suddenly pulled 2 pistols each, and all hell broke loose. Bullets kicked up a storm of dust as the posse dove off the rails and into the brush, all the while blindly returning fire. Amazingly, the brothers escaped without injury, but in the chaos, Jim had thrown down his new coat that he had had specially made for him back in Texas on the ground, and he left it behind. And when the law opened that coat up, it was engraved with the Outlaws' initials and the address of the shop that made it. By the next day, the shop owner revealed to authorities the identity of the 2 men that he had made the jackets for. And just like that, Rube and Jim were the most wanted men in America. With detectives from several railroads, lawmen, and mercenaries alike from all across America hunting for them, and that $2,500 reward, dead or alive, that was placed on their heads. Looking to lay low, the renegades made their way back to Alabama, where, believe it or not, folks thought of them as heroes, taking on the deep pockets of the railroad and the crooked government. For months, every resident in Lamar County, Alabama, helped the fugitives hide, giving them food, shelter, and ammo. The brothers took this opportunity to bury thousands of dollars in gold in a secret area, hoping to return to it one day. And locals were tight-lipped to any lawman, and they wouldn't give any details to their heroes' whereabouts. It worked for nearly 3 months when Rube and Jim got the itch to make a move. You would think that the last place they would have showed their faces again was on a train. But that's exactly what happened when they tried sneaking to Montgomery, Alabama. But the conductor immediately recognized the pair, and the law were promptly waiting to arrest both of them once the train stopped. As soon as Rube stepped off the train, the sheriff's voice rang out.
Red Rube, your running days are over. You're under arrest.
To that, old Rube replied with a smile, I reckon not. And a fist fight broke out among the lawmen and the 2 brothers. Rube managed to pull his gun, and he shot one man and managed to disappear into the crowd, who was gathered to watch the melee. Jim, however, was arrested and promptly sent back to Arkansas and placed in jail. By morning, a posse had tracked Rube to an abandoned cabin where he was sleeping. The posse flung a Molotov cocktail through one of the windows, setting the cabin into flames. And within seconds, Red Rube came running out of the door with nothing but pants on and a pistol in each hand, and his rifle slung across his bare chest, firing hot lead in every direction. Several members of the arresting party were hit, and Rube was hit in the shoulder before he escaped into the swamps, where he hid until nightfall. Under the cover of darkness, he stumbled upon another cabin with smoke coming up from its chimney. But he was desperate, and the door just happened to be unlocked. So the outlaw quietly sat in front of the fire for a few minutes, warming his feet before stealing some shoes and a quilt. Oh yeah, and a horse. And just like that, he was on the run again. Back in Arkansas, Jim had contracted tuberculosis, and by 1888, he had died in jail. Meanwhile, Rube had managed to live in the Alabama wilderness for a few months before a postman saw him and threatened to turn him in. Not taking any chances with a loose tongue, Rube shot and killed him, and the law was hot on his trail when he disappeared into the woods again, only to resurface in Duck Hill, Mississippi, where he decided to pull off a 6th train robbery, this time without his blood brother. As he boarded the train, he pulled out both pistols, holding one on the conductor and waving the other on the passengers, demanding money. Seeing that Rube was all alone, one passenger decided to play hero and rushed towards him to try to stop the outlaw. As his reward, he took 3 bullets to the stomach. Rube had killed another man, and the nationwide manhunt intensified, with the Alabama National Guard descending on his hometown and jailing many locals to make sure folks couldn't hide him anymore. At this point, the most expensive and extensive manhunt in American history was underway for the outlaw Rube Burrow, but he was nowhere to be found. For the rest of 1888, he had simply walked into the woods and vanished yet again. It had been over a year since the last sighting of Rube, and many folks began speculating that he was dead. But he removed all doubt when he blazingly robbed his 7th train in Buckatuna, Mississippi in September of 1889. After the outlaw made his escape, he stole a wagon with a team of oxen and slowly made his way to where all criminals go to retire, Florida. There, believe it or not, Rube Burrow, the notorious outlaw, literally gave up a life of crime and went back to farming for several months. Yet, the law wasn't impressed with this early retirement plan and continued hunting him till they found him and attempted to arrest him in Milton, Florida. But, as you should know now, Rube simply ran into the swamps of the Blackwater River State Park forest and disappeared again for months. The outlaw had been making a mockery of the law and had been on the run for 4 solid years. But it seemed by now that there was only one way that he would ever be stopped, and that was with a bullet. In September of 1890, unbelievably, Rube Burrow single-handedly pulled off his 8th train robbery in Flotation, Florida for $256, and he got away with it until he was recognized by 4 men in Wilcox County. The outlaw had his trusty pistols and that rifle that he had had since he was a boy laying beside him as he ate supper when the 4 men ambushed him from behind in a brawling fist fight. Rube was outnumbered badly, but he let the fists fly, and he used his teeth to bite any part of his attackers that he could get them on. But the odds were too great, and he was arrested and jailed. His running days were over. He was finally locked up behind bars, and there would be no escape. Or would there? You see, Rube kept complaining of hunger, but there was no food in the jail. So Rube told the jailers,
"I've got some ginger snaps in my bag. Hand it to me, and you can have some too if you want."
"Don't do it, Jimmy. That old boy is sneaky as hell,"
one guard cautioned.
"Oh, it's all right. We got both his pistols and his rifle locked up across the street."
And with that, they handed the prisoner his bag. Rube reached right in, and he pulled out a couple ginger snaps and passed one to each one of the guards.
"See, I told you, Earl."
One guard snarked at the other. But in that moment, he heard the cocking of a pistol pointed through the bars at him. Rube had pulled a small revolver from a hidden pocket of the bag and promptly locked the jailers in his cell while he set out across the street to retrieve his $168 and the guns that the sheriff had taken from him. Within moments, Rube kicked the door open and demanded his weapons.
Okay, calm down,"
the sheriff said, and he handed him back his 2 pistols.
"Where's my rifle? I've had it since I was a boy, and I ain't leaving until I get it."
All right, no problem. Take it easy there. It's right here. I'll get it for you."
The lawman nervously said, with his hands held up. But, you see, The lawman had given the gun away to one of the boys that captured Rube, and as he turned around to pretend he was securing the rifle, he quickly spun back around with a revolver he pulled from his pants and opened fire. At nearly point-blank range, the sheriff and the outlaw fought, both firing wildly. Each man had fired 4 of their 6 shots when Rube fired his 5th, blasting through the bone of the lawman's shoulder. And as the official crashed to the ground, he managed to get one last shot off, and it was true, ripping right through Rube Burrow's heart, killing him dead. Over 5,000 people flocked to see Rube Burrow's body at the funeral home. The government was mighty proud of killing him too, and they propped his body up in this iconic photo with his 2 pistols and that rifle that in the end Rube was willing to die for. Ironically, after the public display, Rube's coffin was sealed up and was transported back to his hometown on a, well, you guessed it, on a train. However, as the train approached the depot where Rube's parents were solemnly standing to receive their son's body, the train never slowed down. Instead, the deputies simply pushed his coffin off the moving train, and when it hit the ground, the wood splintered into 1,000 pieces, slinging Rube's body into the dirt. And if that wasn't horrific enough, it was also clear that the lawman had used Rube's body for target practice. Before sealing the coffin, his poor parents scraped up what was left of their son and buried him in Fellowship Cemetery in Lamar County, Alabama. Oh, and before you go, here's one last detail. You remember that buried money? Well, 4 years after Rube was buried, a local farmer was plowing his field when, lo and behold, he unearthed a chest full of gold coins. The railroad companies quickly sued, trying to claim the gold, but the farmer successfully argued in court that folks find gold buried all the time, and there wasn't any proof that it belonged to the wealthy railroad company. And astonishingly, the farmer got to keep all the money that Rube had died for. What about you, my friend? What do you think about the outlaw Rube Burrow? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for more true stories.